All right, so let me introduce, a new and old friend, Shaye Counts. Met him just a couple, maybe a little over a month ago, actually, and got to know each other very well since. Um, Shaye is a father of three kids, two grandkids, if I recall, right, Shaye? He's also powered by his amazing partner, Dr. Stella Humphreys, who, you know, she's the brains and the looks and I think the strength as well behind his work. Um, so Shaye is a longtime teacher. He's taught for over 20 years in middle school all the way up to graduate level work. Um, then he had a 15-year career as a business brand specialist in communications, and that was all over the world with C-suite type folk. He left that because he wanted and felt called to listen to the hearts of young people about how they wanted to build their own learning journeys. And that's kind of when I fell in love with this guy, when he described what you're going to hear today. Um, he, along with Dr. Stella, they lead Imagining Learning, which is again, you'll hear all about it, but they also run a spiritual retreat center called Butterfly Farm in the beautiful, beautiful, spectacularly beautiful hills of North Carolina. So again, he's a teacher, many years of education at all levels. He understands communication, and now he's going to talk to us about hearing from learners. So Shaye, you have the floor.
Great, thank you, Matt, and hi, everybody. I'm so very, very blessed to be here and to see and talk to each of you about my favorite topic in the world, which is expressing what comes through the hearts and the wisdom of young people who I believe are the future of education, transformational education, transformation of education, if we just would stop a moment and listen. Anyway, for the past few years, I've been doing that, and I thought I would love today to be able to share with you not only the work that they've done, but also some of the things that they've said they would love to have in a transformed education. So I think to begin with, what I'd like to say is that this is a listening space. Listening is a really interesting activity that you take on with people, because most of the time we tend to listen to people from our own agenda or with preconceived thoughts, and we're already directing things ahead of time. And this is a very different type of listening. This is a listening with no agenda, no conception of anything other than to listen to what the hearts of the people you're with are expressing. And so I think today, to get into that space, I'd like to start with setting up my screen, which would be really good. And just do a quiet little meditation for a minute. This is Esteto Falls here in the area where we live. So if you just take a deep breath or two, I want you to imagine you're a pond, a beautiful, flat, serene pond. And just let your energy sink into the pond. Look around and see the setting that you sit in as a pond. Notice the life, the wildlife that lives through you, with you. The flowers and the trees, the grasses. So much life vibrating around you. Just take a deep breath now, and I want you to sink beneath the surface of the pond into its essence. Is it crystal clear? Or right now, are you experiencing layers of silt that are clouding your vision? Perhaps these layers of silt are making things a little murky. And if you sense into them, you'll probably feel there's a heaviness to them. So take a deep breath. If they're the day's activities, just let that heaviness take them to the bottom where they'll sit as silt. Or perhaps they're ongoing worries and concerns that you carry. Now is the time to let them go and just settle down, down, down to the bottom. See the water getting clearer by the moment. Or perhaps it's the issues you carry around education, frustrations, anger, hurt, ideas, wishes, beliefs, whatever they are. Just let them sink down to the bottom of the pond. And now look around. Perhaps it's much clearer for you. Let your mind be free. And just begin to drop your energy completely and totally into your heart. So maybe perhaps now you can hear the pond, the life around the pond, but from a very different place. You can hear it in your heart. Most of us listen and it goes straight to our mind. But in this time, we want to let it sink into our heart. Sense the life around you in your heart. Sense the essence of the pond in your heart. And just breathe quietly and softly. And really sense where that place in your heart is. And I'm talking about your energetic heart, not your physical heart. Let those feelings come to you rather than you directing to it. Just sit with it. And for the next little while, just try and stay in this space as you listen and sense into the gift that you're about to receive from the hearts of young people. So take a last deep breath and let yourself surface. And just as you get ready, open your eyes and let's continue. Thank you. So to begin our time together, I want to start with an invitation from the young people who participated in the listening sessions over the time that we've been doing them. Okay, thank you so much for that. I'd like to start with a little story about this because I was reminded of it a little while ago, and it's a very apropos to the conversation today. And it starts with my son, Elliot, when he was 5 years old and playing t-ball. For those of you who don't know about t-ball, it's just a way young people can play. The ball set on a tee, and an adult, and the pitcher that you see out in the top left fake pitches to the player, and the player hits the ball off the tee, and then the rules of baseball typically apply. Well, when my son Elliot came to bat, it was the last inning. There were 2 outs. There were 2 people on base that could score. If he got a hit, they would win the game. And if he was out, they would lose the game. So the pitcher fake pitches the ball to him. He takes this swing at the ball. He really hits more of the tee than he does the baseball, and the ball goes bloop and just lands like 3 or 4 inches in front of the plate. Absolutely nobody on the field knew what to do. They were just stood there frozen. Elliot was frozen, nobody knew what to do. And so all of a sudden, the people that knew what to do were the parents. So they started screaming at the top of their lungs, and all this sound breaks out. My son gets the message to run to first base. He starts running. The catcher goes to pick up the ball and throws it to first base, and my son is out and the game is over. But the coach of our team believed it was a foul ball. And so all of a sudden, our coach comes flying out of the dugout. The other coach comes flying out of the dugout. The umpire steps up, and they're screaming at each other at the top of their lungs over the outcome of the game and the decision that's been made. And I'm just swept up in all of this. And then all of a sudden I noticed that sandwiched between these 3 men at about their bellies is my son. And he's looking up at these 3 men screaming their heads off. And I've never forgotten that image, because I kind of think that that's how it is with education today. All these groups have gathered around our children, and they are saying what they think it should be, but they really haven't issued a full-on invitation to young people to participate in that dialogue. And so that's what Imagining Learning was birthed to do. I think it sends a really tough message to young people when they're not asked to be included in something that they spend so many hours of their lives in. And not just that, but I don't think it's intentional. I just think that we're not looking at the source as one of a value. And I hope that you'll see today that this is an incredibly valuable and wise source that we're overlooking. So what we did was we developed a visioning process based in collective listening. And I think today, as we're trying to envision new futures in almost every industry, collective visioning, collective listening is a tremendous tool to articulate how we should move in the future. And since the beginning, we've had a guiding question, which is how do we educate young people to thrive in a world of possibility? And if we could build our school systems around that, around thriving and the fact that the world is an unknown, that it's all about possibility, what would that look like? And that's been the driving question for it. And And so what we believed was that if we could go out and work with young people over and over again in this process, that we would begin to emerge a collective voice of what they would say they would do to envision transformation, transforming education. So how will we do this? It was very simple. We did them in what we call listening sessions. And this was a different type of listening for me because you always want to have your own input into what you're listening to. But in this case, that wasn't my job. My job was to hold space for their voices to emerge. So we were enabling young people to move from what they knew about education, their actual experience of it, into what they didn't know that they knew. And that took quite a leap to do. So the listening sessions were created for young people ages 13 to 19. And this is a group. And typically we did 8 people at a time. We could go anywhere from 6 to 12. Anything below 6, the energy got too low. Over 12, we just couldn't get it done in the amount of time that we'd said. And 8 was kind of like the optimal number. It was intimate, small, and yet we could move fairly quickly and be pretty nimble. What we found, though, before we started was that we were going to encounter some challenges with teens, some levels of suspicion. Why am I really here? What is it you want to take from me? What I have to say won't be listened to. So there was some cynicism that we thought we would encounter. The schools don't really care about what we say, otherwise they'd be asking us. And then they had just typical teen fear coming into the circle. You know, I will be mocked. And I have nothing to offer was a big statement we heard from time to time. And also, they're very busy. So because of all this, they could easily say, I don't have time to do this. So we had some real challenges coming in that we had to get over very quickly with them. So I viewed this as a circle of trust, in which we had to come across as authentic, respectful. It had to be a space of safety, a place of true caring for them as they were as human beings, and a place of gratitude that they've shown up on behalf of young people all over the US or all over the world for these sessions. So the listening space to me was a sacred space in which I was moving them out of their heads into their hearts, into a place that they didn't even know existed within themselves, so that they could speak a truth from themselves that they had carried but probably never been asked to voice before. The space was open, very open and embracing. I based some of this on David Cooper Ryder's whole thing around, oh shoot, it just went right out of appreciative inquiry, sorry, appreciative inquiry. If you've ever experienced that, it's really about what's good, not what's bad or what's wrong. If we got into a dialogue about what was wrong in these sessions with education, we would have never gotten to the visioning. So doing it from an appreciative standpoint was really terrific. It was also about their hearts and their intuition, not about the knowledge they held. It wasn't a test. There was nothing about this that was anything they'd experienced in school. It was strictly to move them into that space, heart space. And so after a lot of thought, we decided that we could get them to come for about 3 hours, and that we had 3 hours to do this. And always I tried to keep the sessions with 8 kids, 6 kids, 12 kids, to down to 1 to 2 adults, so there wouldn't be a fishbowl effect, so that it was really there for them to express what they thought and nothing more. So this is how we set it up in 6 different activities. And the key thing was, how would they feel going through each of these? And I'm going to go through these with you really quickly, but in a minute. But what I want to point to is that the first 2 hours was spent in developing safety, trust, and connection. So we had to move with them very quickly into this space, but to do that took 2 of the 3 hours to do it. And we did it through a very direct and a very planned approach, which I'll go through in a second. And then so if you look back at this, we would open in the circle, and I would introduce myself, and everybody else would introduce themselves, and we would all spend just a few minutes getting to know each other a little bit. And then I would explain why they were there and talk to them about what an honor it was to be with them, because they were here representing their brothers, their sisters, their fellow classmates, and other students around the country. And so that this was a really wonderful thing that they were doing on behalf of everyone. So the second phase was, we had on the floor, we had lots of paper and pens. I asked them to take up a couple of sheets of paper and pens and answer these 8 questions. And if you notice, these questions are not your average questions. They're about the things in their hearts. So who was your favorite person when you were younger? What did it feel like to be with them? Or what 3 things are you so passionate about that if you were to create a long-term learning journey for young people, you know, what would you want them to experience? Or another question we would ask is, what do you like when you feel most alive? And so after they had answered all the questions, we'd come back in the circle and share each of their answers. And so you can see they'd be starting to share parts of themselves that they hadn't probably shared with each other ever. And here's a group filling it out. They could go anywhere in the room we were in to do it. The sessions were set up so we could do these anywhere. They're very simple. I've done them in living rooms and schools and basements, all kinds of places. Here's another group. But the key was just continuing to make them feel honored and safe. There were no wrong answers. So every time they shared, they were able to not answer if they didn't feel they had an answer, which was just as fine as if they did. There was some minimal dialogue, but what was happening is the group was starting to trust each other and learn about each other in a more human way from the heart. And this is one of the journals and what they looked like. Some of them in the way that they express themselves to the questions that we asked. And then I would ask them to get another sheet of paper. And we went into phase 2, which was, please tell us a story about a time when somebody else's wisdom influenced and inspired you to change your life. And this would get a lot of head scratching. What do you mean by wisdom? All kinds of questions. But in the end, we would help them just not think through the story, but just understand it. And then they would write these stories. So like, I'm sharing a couple of these. They're fairly sacred to me, but I want you to understand how deep they went. My dad, not necessarily his wisdom, but his mistakes make me want to be all that I can be and successful and strive to do my best and never look back. Keep climbing. So you imagine a teenager sharing this with 7 or 8 or 10 other teens that they've never met before. This is about a young woman who had decided she was worth nothing, and that not being on the planet any longer would be quite beneficial to the planet. And through some things her dad said to her, she did not take her life. And so you can tell that through these stories that how deeply they're connecting with each other and how open they're getting with each other. And we had all sorts of stories. They were just amazing, but they were being really open and honest with each other in a way that they hadn't been for the most part before. And so that meant we were ready to go into the next phase, which was the these last three stages, the creative stage. And so what I would do is I would divide them into groups, and it'd be like, depending on the numbers, 2 groups of 4, 3 groups of 3, you know, just depending on how many there were, but never any more than 4. And the first part would be a co-creative phase together of 30 minutes where they would create their vision. And then the last 30 minutes, they would paint their vision on a 4.5 foot by 6 foot sheet of paper. And so once they were divided into groups, I would say to them, okay, here's the question I want you to answer. If you could create a learning journey that you absolutely loved with all the resources you wanted and without any influence from others, what would you create? And we had set up some guidelines in the beginning of the session so that they knew that they were free to really, one of them was no boundaries, that they could really be as free to be as creative as they could be, and that there were no wrong answers. And that one of the things they would say is, well, what are you looking for? What do you want us to say? I mean, what should we do? And I would say, just answer the question to the very best of your ability as a group, and really honor each other and listen to each other. So throughout the process of visioning, and here they are starting, we would walk the room and just listen to the vibe of the groups, but never, ever were we to offer support for their ideas or thoughts. I wanted this to be as pure a voice as possible coming from them. And so they spent on average 15 minutes doing this. I gave them 30, but anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes and they'd be ready to paint. So they got to it very, very quickly. And then came this whole piece of painting. And so while they're visioning, we're mixing paints really quickly for them. And then we'd set out the sheets of paper, and then they'd come to the paper and start to paint. And the painting got around their minds. It got them into their hearts using their artistic abilities, some of which were great and some which were not so good, but that didn't matter. It wasn't about artists. And the children that participated in this, we never asked for a specific type. Whoever was there was supposed to be there. And we asked that people to get as diverse a group as they could, but not just artists, not top students. All kinds of students came to do these. You can see there was a lot of intensity. The energy in the room just shot up as they painted. They really got into it. And so what we thought might be fun is to break out into little groups for a few minutes. But before you hear what they said, and why don't, as the groups, we answer this question together. If you could create a learning journey you absolutely love, what would you create? So what would be some of the elements of it? And I know you haven't had much preparation to do this, but it does give you a chance to delve into the question a little like they did. And to, I think, be helpful when you come back.
Okay.
Matt, over to you.
I'll break everybody up into rooms. Just give me 1 second here. I think I'll do 2 rooms. They'll be a little larger, but coming up in a moment.
I'm going to stay out, Matt.
Okay. How long do we want to give them, Shay?
How are we doing on time?
We're running way over.
Way over.
Way over. Yeah. Yeah, it's
okay.
40. Could
how long do you?
Could we do 5 minutes or 10 minutes or?
I don't think any more than 10, maybe 7. Try
Okay.
that, just see.
Yep.
Can anybody else hear us?
Shouldn't be able to. I mean, I'm recording this. I can edit this, of course, out, but you okay? You want to?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm just interested in what they'll have to say when they come back. It's not,
Yeah.
if I know they're running way over, we could have skipped this part.
Oh, that's okay. It's all, you know what? Try it all will work out exactly as it's supposed to. So let me say,
I'm worried Kristen, will Kristen be okay if she doesn't get any time to?
Well, you know, we'll make it work. We'll make it work. I'm going to join one of the groups
Okay.
and listen in.
All right.
Okay. You want to join one, or you want to stay out and prepare for the
Yeah,
next round?
I'll join the other one. I'll join the other one.
Okay.
So you're going to run the part when they come back, right?
Oh, like the record, the processing of the conversation. Is that what you mean? You just locked up on me. Shai, are you still there? Shai, are you still there? All right. Yeah, I'm going to try to close room 2 because they're the talkative group. Oh,
we're talkative too. We're just not rule breakers like they are, Matt. So.
You've gone to public school, haven't you?
That's right. Conform. I was built to conform.
Oh my goodness, that wasn't fair, but we're among friends, right?
It's accurate. Doesn't have to be fair because it's accurate.
All right. Okay. Shai A, welcome back, everybody. Shai A, you have the floor again, and we're again recording, folks. So it's on you, Shai A. I think you're muted.
The wildest thing just happened. My satellite dish went out while y'all went away. but it just came back right when you came back. So beautiful. So would group one like to just share what they were, where they got to and what the experience was like?
Who's group one?
I don't even remember.
Oh, I don't
So
know.
We can share.
Yeah, let's just go. Let's kind of move it along because we're going a little over
Yeah.
here.
So Isabel's mic wasn't working. She listened in, and it was myself and Batsheva and Matt. And we all sort of shared similar things. And then Matt was like, I'm doing that. So it was very awesome. A very fluid learning experience for students, personalized. Jump in, Batsheva or Matt.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the fluidity of space and sort of everything that we talked about. Matt had was doing in some way or another, but that's what I was thinking of is a very fluid space and, obviously no grades. I mean, I think that might be obvious, hopefully. And also no grades, meaning, as Matt said, determined by what did you say, district and birth date, none of that, but it's really allowing the students to be at the levels that they will naturally be in an organic way, instead of trying to foist it upon them and letting it be more student driven. So I was talking about project-based learning, but also Matt was talking about Matt, why don't you say what you were talking about? I don't need to say what you were talking about.
And one thing that, just to add to what you said, our grading philosophy is mastered and not yet.
That's ours, exactly. That's what we did at Arte and now Qualia. That's exactly it.
Yep. And so it really lets students progress where they are and demonstrate mastery. And when they're ready to engage in the next challenge, they do it. And it's great. It's just great to honor where they are and let them excel. Whether we mentioned they might be on a 4th grade curriculum in math and an 11th grade curriculum in English or whatever, and that's great. And traditional settings struggle with that because they're trying to keep everyone in the same cohort and being able to provide grade level matching what the kid needs at their age, whatever it is. We have a 10-year-old that has college math classes.
Wait. All right, sorry
still
guys, we have a limited time, so I don't mean to interrupt, but
Oh yeah, withdrawn.
thank you for sharing. How about the other group?
I want Karima to go first because she brings out, like Isabel brings out my inner education punk rocker. So she has but the direct statements. So
All right. Well, hello everyone. My name is Karima, and we talked about Linnea. Am I saying your name correctly? Linnea wanted to be outside. Linnea and Christopher were both expressed that they were in the gifted and talented section and didn't need to be segmented off from the rest of the school. And when people thought that was wrong, then they put them in with the rest of the kids. And Christopher was bored out of his mind. And then our friend Deepak was saying that he wished that he could have been connected globally with other people, and to have master teachers to pour into him. And I said, throw the whole thing away. What would it be like if school was never invented? And if right now, if we can wave a magic wand and poof, it all goes away. And instead, children are invited to do something every single day that lights them up on the inside, just for the sake of doing something that lights you up on the inside, and then allowing that to be the thing that we determine, who are you? And what is it that you would like to do? Did I get that right?
That sounds good. Yeah.
love it.
Okay, back to you,
A lot
Sean.
of nodding heads there. Okay, Matt, how long do I have left? Because I know we're running up.
Well, I don't know. I just work here, Shai. So if you can maybe summarize a little bit quicker, I don't want to hesitate or hold your presentation or hostage to our timeline. So we'll figure stuff out
Okay, well, I'll move. Can you guys see this?
I think you just lost
shared
the
the
screen share.
screen?
Why don't you try it one more time?
Yeah, for some reason, there it is. Okay, now I'm good.
There we go.
Okay. Sorry, y'all. So what I'd like to do is share with you, what we did was at the closing, right before the closing circle, we got them together to share their paintings with each other. And they presented their finding, you know, what their vision was, and we taped it. So I'm going to read it to you word for word what they said. This is not a blueprint, but an abstract expression of how it feels to be there. The man with the vine at the bottom left represents a curriculum that is flexible and is based on curiosity. The black door at the left represents entering the school. Black door at the left represents entering the school, not knowing where you are going, but as the feet say, with each step grow a little more, please. You then know yourself, even though you are on to places where you do not know where you're going. So the black door on the right represented leaving the school, knowing who you were, but not knowing where you were going. The man in the upper left corner represents experiential learning, and that we grow toward what we each want. At the top center is a plus sign and an equal sign that have been put together to form one symbol standing for equality and inclusiveness. The hearts and the vine in the upper right corner represent how you are treated and that everyone and everything is growing. The splatters of paint represent creativity and randomness of the learning. So that was this particular painting. They got a lot into it. This painting is about many different things. The face is happiness. The mountains represent peacefulness in our journey for knowledge. The books represent learning and knowledge, and they can lift you up. The boat is carrying us all together. The cloud-like structure at the top center represents a collection of ourselves, and we have all come together to teach each other, and the long black strands represent the teaching coming down into the world. The entire landscape is how a school should be. It is beautiful and happy, welcoming, and it involves everyone, just like a school should do. And the splashes show you how diverse the school community can be. So I'm going to skip this one and go on to this one. This picture represents a year-long journey across 7 continents while traveling by boat, train, car, climbing, and hiking. Students, one from each continent and not speaking each other's languages, would take this journey together. The sky is a combination of day and night, representing the 24 hours of experience each day. The yellow is arid land. The blue is water. There is the city and the tall buildings in the front and the villages and the dream represented by the castle. This is truly an immense journey. On each continent to which they travel, the student who is from that continent would be responsible for the experience of the others. On each continent, the students would experience the social, familial, educational structures that they live by. All learning would be experiential. The nomad school would begin with a 2-month basic course, introducing each other, forming their coming experience together, and each planning some of the aspects of the trip on their own continent. It would be real world versus an institution. It would be like an extended, awesome camping trip. It would mean learning from and teaching each other. So as you can see and hear in these, there's themes that emerge over and through these. And if you do this over and over with the same process, different themes begin to become heard over and over again, which we thought represented the collective voice. So I'm going to share with you 7 themes really quickly that came from the paintings. And so one thing just to begin with is we put them into 4 buckets: what we learn, self-discovery, how we learn, and our learning culture. Most of everything they said fit into those 4 categories. And these 7 that I'm going to share come out of all 4 categories. So the first was love is the foundation. In this particular painting, it said the community in the school is strong, the community outside the school is supportive and safe, and all is built on a foundation of love. They felt the schools, the system should have a bright, loving way about it. We wrote words around the globe. They are in different languages, again, reflecting the different cultures we come from. One is Urukundo, Umuyango, love in everything. So one of the platforms here, themes is love is the foundation. Another is growth, voice, and gifts. This was a big category. They really wanted to learn about themselves, what their voice, be able to express their voice and exercise their gifts. So over here, there's a blue explosion in the middle right side. The blue explosion in the middle right is the way you understand yourself coming into the school. The tree of life to the right represents the end of the experience, where you are rooted and your life is stationary and everything is put in and it is orderly. So you come out again knowing yourself. The overall theme was of a school that serves as a tree where students arrive with shallow roots, but through their experience develop their own deep roots, a place where they live to learn. Beautiful. Curiosity-based learning, experiential-based learning, you saw that. There's a teleporter for travel to other parts of the world. It is not a school, but life is a learning journey. The different sized people represent older and younger generations teaching each other. This painting is labeled experience because it is what most learning should be about, experiential learning. Each of the green plants represents some other learning you have with roots going down to experience. The word experience is at the core of the earth. We believe the core of learning is experience. Another theme is teaching, learning, and accomplishing together. This was a big theme too. Learning is best done when we are learning from each other and gathering our collective experiences so we may use the learning for a better life. The boat on the water reflects that education is about self-exploration. It is important to learn by seeing, by experience. The school should have the students' ideas at the center, and the school should be a resource for the students. The tree is an educational system, a solid structure for the students to use at their own leisure, and it is not there to tell the students what they need to learn. It's there for them to flourish. Another big issue, theme was thriving in community. They really wanted to feel the connection to their communities, either local or around the world. Through giving back and being independent, we make up the world. So we drew these itty bitty people that make up the world, each person being independent and an individual adds to society. And together we are one and can accomplish a lot and make a world. They are all interacting together. The hands symbolize working together in a spirit of cooperation. We make up the entire school and create the entire learning environment. So one thing to say too is this is just a small section of what each of the paintings had, but this is just to highlight the different themes that were picked. Culture, understanding cultures all around the world was huge. Our vision represents an education where you can learn anywhere in the world. You can learn day and night, and you do not need a building. Education happens everywhere. No walls, no barriers to learning. In our vision, the earth symbolized home. In the bottom left are two people talking. They both travel a lot and talk to a lot of people. In our painting, they are exchanging ideas in different cultures to each other. Through this, people understand each other much better, and the whole world is more peaceful. And the last theme was to be learning in, like you guys wanted, outdoors school and connected to nature. The school is located on the ocean where there's a sense of peace, serenity, and visual greatness is encouraged. There's a community flower and vegetable garden. So the students grow their own food. Growing food is proven to unify things and make it a more cohesive community. All food served is organic and healthy. And this is a really fun one. This is the Ivy League of trailer schools. It is permanently placed deep in the woods. There are no cars to transport the trailers. There are normal subjects taught in the different trailers. PE is in the lake. There's a fire pit in the center of the school where everyone gathers to talk, sing songs, etc. There's a garden where all the students work to grow the food. The students run the school and the teachers are there to help them. It is self-governed and being deep in the wilderness, a place of bonding. The ferns, which were picked and glued onto the painting, represent trees, but overall the school is there so students can get in touch with nature. So these are the 7 themes we wanted to highlight for you. But there's something more to this, and it's beneath the themes. So if you looked at curiosity-based experiential learning and cultural immersion globally, they're sensing within themselves that they want a real freedom to explore. And that requires a value that we trust them. And the foundational belief or expression of this is self-responsibility. They want that energy, that feeling, that foundational belief. These are some of the qualities. These are all words that were written into the paintings over time, and you can see they're all just beautiful words, bringing a tremendous amount of energy into the system that they would create. And so if you take those qualities along with love as the foundation, you can see that they're asking for a supportive system, a system that really cares about who they are and how they feel and live their lives and what they become. And that belief then is love. And then if you look at growth, voice, and gifts, and you look at learning and connected to nature, they're sensing themselves in relationship to myself, in relationship to people, to others in the world around me. And the innate value they're expressing here is stewardship. And the foundational belief is interconnection. And then teaching, learning, and accomplishing together and thriving in community. What they expressed over and over again is they didn't want teachers, they wanted mentors. They wanted guidance. They wanted to be in a structure where they felt they were in a partnership. And as a result, they had a tremendous amount of shared wisdom going back and forth amongst all of them. So when you look at those 4 beliefs, those could be pretty good words to start over, like Karima was talking about, from, or to create a new DNA for learning. There's a lot more that came out of the paintings, but this is just sort of a synopsis for you. And I'll just share a couple of things they said. This was the #1 comment we heard over and over. Thank you for listening. No one has ever asked us what we think. That's pretty heartbreaking on one end, but on the other, it's wonderful that they understood and appreciated it. I did not think it was possible to share such a sense of family with strangers in such a short period of time. Familia. And so they really felt bound to each other. We were empowered. We felt like we had the right to ask for everything we wanted in our schools. Education is a fundamental right that deserves a higher status. This was empowering to me. And this is a wonderful comment by a 15-year-old. I wish this school had been made a long time ago, showing a real deep relationship to what he created. And the one thing that I didn't expect to happen is I heard over quite a few times, you mean my future doesn't have to be like this? I can envision my own life being something else,
Wow.
which is a beautiful thing for them to experience. So thank you. This group in Ohio is saying thank you. This group from Charleston, they didn't look like that when it started. This was always at the end. And this is a group from Boulder.
Shai, how many times did you do this? What was the time frame? How many different groups?
I've done it over about 8 years. I did 30 groups. What I found was from the beginning, the same themes emerged over and over again. And so what I kind of viewed this as was a beginning, you know, like I called it Imagining Learning 1.0. I know there's a deep wisdom that we can share with people, and we could do more of them over and over again and continue to compile it. So that's about what I've done so far. I did these on my own and on my own time. So yeah, so I think there's so many possibilities for this, and we've talked some with Matt and Peter about this, but more listening sessions could be done. I think to do that, we need to train facilitators. This is not just anybody can go do this. To get the kids into that deep place really requires somebody to hold space for them. We could create a stewardship program where young people go through training to take over the whole thing. And I think that could be fantastic to have young people running it all. Young people walk out of their schools, they can tell you what they're upset with, but they can't present adults with a vision. So we could put this all together in a guidebook for young people all over the US. We had young people call us from all over the US asking us to come to their communities to do listening sessions. And we did them for free. And there's just a lot of great possibilities. And one we just talked about was go into a community, do some with students, some with parents, some with teachers and administrators, and then bring them all together to share what they created, and then do some intergenerational dialogue around all of that. So we feel like there's tons of different possibilities. I can't do it alone.
Right.
I'd love to have help. Yeah.
So Shai, first off, thank you. This is great. Any other questions about this?
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead, Betsy.
first of all, I just want to say it was so amazing, and I appreciate it so much. It made me want to cry so much. It was so moving and also heartbreaking, because these are clearly things that they're not getting, right? These are things, and sometimes programs like that exist out there, but it's not on a big enough scale to impact enough students. And I love your idea of doing these separate versions of this and then bringing it all together, because I think, you know, it's one thing for us who've all drank the Kool-Aid to hear this, right? But the people who really need to hear it are the people who haven't even had the idea to dream, and or don't even realize that there could be something different, right? We all get it, but for administrators and schools and parents to see this is really, really crucial. So I love the work that you're doing, and I definitely want to hear more about it.
Yep.
Thank you. I agree, just really quickly, that I think I've done it with adults and I've done it with mixed audiences, adults and young people together. And it's really amazing how they get into it. And I think it's one thing to share this with them. It's another thing for them to experience it, just like the kids said, experience it. So anyway.
And then make a plan, because like it's beautiful to share these things, but there has to be a follow-up to it to see if we can help make these things happen.
Right.
And I love that
Right.
there's lots of different visions, because there's lots of different kids who want different kinds of things. Not everybody wants the exact same thing, but as you noted, even within these differences, there's some overall themes that flow through it. And I think that's such an amazing basis for starting. I took so many notes because it just kept giving me all of these ideas. It was just, I love, sorry, I'll stop talking.
That's good. That's why we had him.
Keep going.
That's why he's here. So Chris, I know you had a question.
Yeah, just one thing. So Chad, thank you for this work. It's amazing. After the very first session, I looked at a lot of videos and did that. So it was good to see it in person. There were multiple points when you were talking, given the presentation, I kept getting goosebumps. And I think it was partially because I don't know if this has ever been mapped to the work that you've done being mapped to traditional indigenous methods of education, like pre-colonial influence and all of that, because everything that you're talking about is almost directly parallel, in particular indigenous Native American cultures. It's so parallel that I had this weird eerie moment that, like, is this so embedded, right, in maybe genetically in our brains, our hardwired brains, that this is the right way to do education? It was kind of spooky. So I was curious if you've ever looked at the work that you've done and kind of compared that to traditional indigenous education systems, because it's so similar.
Great question.
Thanks, Christopher. You got me with goosebumps. I have studied Native American ways. They've been kind of my spiritual guide for my life. But I know Dr. Greg Caete. Do you know Greg? Have you met him? He's brilliant. He's written an amazing book about education for young Native children, but it's applicable to everything. But I do think what the kids are expressing is an innate set of human values that we all carry, that the system wasn't devised for in the beginning. It was created for a completely different reason. And I think trying to adapt to the old system to a new set of values is an incredibly difficult undertaking, you know. Whereas if we created a new seed with new DNA, which is what I think is happening around the country, but it's not really happening much in public schools. It's those millions of children that are in public school that I worry about, you know, every day a lot. So yes, it is. I don't know. It's just beautiful to me what they expressed. I didn't have a Native American thought. I've actually never thought that way until you brought it up. But thank you.
Yeah, it felt like, it feels a little bit like Chomsky's work around language, right? Like we're hardwired for this thing. You just need to figure out how to unlock it. So it's great. Thanks for this work.
Linnea just put some stuff in the chat that seems to tie into what you just asked, Chris. So Linnea, thanks for that. Shia, let's go ahead and draw this to the close. In the chat, again, is a link to sign up if you would like to be a facilitator or just stay in touch with Shia's work. Here at GEM, we just feel like this is one of the threads of our work around how do you hear from the learners and the students themselves. This to me is one of the potentially many things that we could be doing to support the growth of student agency and student voice. So with that, the link is in the chat. And I know we're way over, but what we're going to do, Kristen has a presentation that I'm going to end up recording and probably putting online. So for those that have other activities, whether it's kids or I see you, Christopher, you got a child there who's pulling on you. We're just going to have her do a real short 5-minute kind of description of what she's done. And then again, she'll do a little longer one next week, but I want to have something that I can send out via email and potentially LinkedIn, so people can get a sense of what we're thinking about. So, so again, Kristen, I'm going to introduce you, and then if you could just spend just like a really high level description of what you're doing and why it matters, and then we'll go from there. So, Kristen,
Absolutely. I don't even have a presentation, so it'll go quick.
great. All right, just description. So Shai, do me a favor and pull down your screen share there. Maybe I could do that myself. Let's see. Yep, great.
I got it.
Thank you.
I just want to, can I just say thank you to you guys for staying there and being a part of this. It's a beautiful experience to share it. Over to you, Kristen.